Kלים Perik Tes, Mishnah Gimel. Hasheretz shenimtza lemata min chushte shel tanur. Find the dead sherets in the ground underneath the tanur. The tanur is sitting on the ground, and in the earth just below the tanur, not within the aver of the tanur, you find a dead sheretz, for instance, a dead mouse. Tahor. The tanur is tahor. We have a suffix. Maybe the sheretz fell through the tanur when it was dead and ended up at the bottom of the tanur later on. So it's a suffix whether the sheretz in its dead state actually entered Avir tanur. Nevertheless, we're makel, and we say shani omer because we say chai nofal. It didn't have to do it that way. It could have actually fallen in alive, and a live sheretz is not matame. For achshav meis, and only after it exited the toich of the tanur and dug itself into the ground, then it died. And this brings up some very important halachas here, this din here. First of all, if the sheretz is dead now, then under the rules of chazaka, we should automatically assume that it's been dead for a long time. So maybe to say Shani Omer Chai Nofal v'achshav meis goes against the normal rules of chazaka, because really one should extend the known state of being dead now to as far back as one can. Nevertheless, the halacha is still that we don't follow that chazaka, the cheskas meis, because we have what's called ein machazikin tuma mimokim lemokim. We only apply the principle of chazaka to say that this mouse has been dead for a long time, only in the mokim that it is found beneath the tanur. But to say that it was actually dead and also having been in a different place, i.e. through the aver of the tanur, that we don't say under the rules of ein machazikin tuma mimokim lemokim. Also, this is actually a case of a suffix. And the suffix is, did the tanur become tomei through the sheretz mace or not? We go lekula. Now we know the rules. Suffix tumah b'shus harabim is toher, but suffix tumah b'shus hayochid, the rule is sveikoi tomei, and this lechayre is a suffix tumah b'shus hayochid. So why is the rule sveikoi toher? The answer is because the rule that suffix tumah b'shus hayochid tomei is only said in the case of a davar sheyesh boi da'as lishoel, which one day mitzvah we will do in Mesechta Taharis. Where there is a human in it, there's an odom involved in the suffix, then you say the rule suffix tumah b'shus hayochid tomei. But where we're dealing with completely inanimate objects, then the rule is suffix davar sheyesh suffix davar she'ein boi das lishoel, even b'shus hayochid sveikoi tomei. And the Mishnah carries on. Machat oitebas shenimtzu lemato min chushte shel tanur. Instead of there being a dead sheretz, one finds a needle or a ring in the earth, in the same nechushte shel tanur, in the earth underneath the tanur. And we know that this machat oitebas were tomei, or has always been tomei. Again, tohar, because maybe the machat oitebas never fell through the toich of the tanur at all. Shani Omer could say, Sham hayu achalei ba tanur. They were there first. In the case of the sheretz, sometimes you can tell the sheretz is quite new, but nevertheless we use the kula that maybe the sheretz died afterwards. The machat tebas could have been there for a long time. They could have actually been there before the tanur was put there. So therefore, there's no evidence that the machat and tebas were actually wherever in the avir in the toich of the klicheres of the tanur. Shani omer sham hayu anshalai ba hatanur, and therefore again we pass in the kula under the rule of a suffix tumah v'davar she'ein boi da'as lishoel is toher, even in rishus hayachid. Mishnah carries on, nimtzu be'efer mikla. You find the machat of the tabas, and according to Bar Tanura, in the case of the sheretz, we'll work through Bar Tanura's pshat. If one finds the sheretz tomei, or the machat or tabas tomei, not in the ground underneath the tanur, but in the efer mikla, in the little mound of ash at the bottom of the tanur, and of course tomei, because the machat tabas and the sheretz actually are now inside the toich of the klicheres. You may ask, Pshita, it's obvious. So the Tiferes Yisrael says, you may have thought that being embedded, buried in the Efer does not mean that they are now in the toich. In other words, the Efer has been mevatel, the toich of the klicheres, and being inside the Efer, although you are within the confines of the klicheres, you are still not in the toich of the klicheres. You can, as we had a Mishnah before, you can actually block up a klicheres with earth, but this is not called blocking up with earth, and therefore you're still considered to be within the confines of the klicheres. That's the pshat of the Rash and the Bar Tanura. However, there's another pshat. This is the pshat of the Rash, of the Rosh and the Rambam. The Gaon also learns like this. That actually, Be'efer Mikla doesn't mean the mound of ash inside the tunnel or sticking up into the tunnel. It's below the tunnel as well, like the previous case. However, it's not in earth. It's actually in ash, pressed down ash, which had been previously inside the aver of the tunnel. It is not there now. Now this Mishnah, according to them, only applies in the case of the Machat Tabas. She'eloi b'mei yitle, says the Mishnah, because let's look at the Machat Tabas is now found inside the ash. True, it is not there. It is not now within the toich of the tunnel. However, how did it get into the ash? It must have been that it was together with the ash when the ash was inside the toich of the tunnel and is now sunk into the ground. In the case of the sherets, I wouldn't say this then because the sherets could have done all that when it was alive and then died, so I've still got the tahara. I still can rely, b'toila, on the fact that it came there later and died. However, with the case of the machat and the tabas, which finds itself in the ash, because the ash must have been in the aver of the klicheres, who are in the machat and tabas must have been in the aver of klicheres, and there's nothing else you can be toila on. She'enoi b'mei yitleh.